I mean, we're treating Alex Jones like a credible voice here. We're treating Tucker Carlson like a credible voice.
I don't consider Alex Jones a credible voice, but there are people you travel the country and talk to Trump voters who do.
Okay, so let's just say you're right, and some people listen to them. Who do you think they listen to more? Those people or President Donald Trump? I know what the polling says.
Far-right MAGA stug pundit Scott Jennings is melting down over the fracturing of MAGA, with major voices like Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson coming out in opposition of Donald Trump. We're going to take a look at clips of Scott Jennings on with John King and Karen Finney discussing this chaos among the MAGA base. I want to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Tonight, a MAGA revolt growing over the president's war with Iran, even as President Trump claims victory with a shaky ceasefire deal. Listen right here for yourself.
Iran has basically gotten everything it wants in the agreement because Trump was desperate to open the Strait of Hormuz. There's a huge black eye to the United States. This thing, 39 days in, is a total and complete disaster, and we have been right about it.
I am sick of this shit. I'm sick of it. Can't he just behave like a normal human? I mean, honestly, like the president, 3-8, yes, shut up. Shut up about that shit. You don't threaten to wipe out an entire civilization. We're talking about civilians just casually in a social media post.
Those people who are in direct contact with the president need to say, no, I'll resign. I'll do whatever I can do legally to stop this because this is insane. And if given the order, I'm not carrying it out.
I'm confused. I can't believe we went to this war. When we started bombing Iran, I was like, this can't be true. Because supposedly they're trying to stop the terrorists.
That's crazy, though, if you're the terrorist. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to stop them, stand in front of the mirror.
My political sources tonight, Karen Finney, former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton, and Scott Jennings, the former senior advisor to Senator Mitch McConnell. Thank you for being here. Scott, you may not agree with all those voices, but there are a lot of Trump voters out in America who listen to them. Maybe not all of them, but some listen to Tucker, some listen to Megyn, some listen to Joe Rogan, some still listen to Alex Jones. This is going to hurt.
I mean, we're treating Alex Jones like a credible voice here. We're treating Tucker Carlson like a credible voice.
I don't consider Alex Jones a credible voice, but there are people you travel the country and talk to Trump voters who do.
Okay, so let's just say you're right, and some people listen to them. Who do you think they listen to more? Those people or President Donald Trump? I know what the polling says, and I know what my instincts tell me is that Donald Trump runs the party, he runs the country, not the podcasters. They're welcome to have opinions, and I don't begrudge anybody having an opinion, and you could have a different opinion than Donald Trump. But I know who has more influence over the Republican Party and the conservative movement, and there's no doubt about it, and there has never been any doubt about it, really all that much for the last 10 years. So their opinions are fine, but the person in charge right now was in charge, is in charge, and will be in charge until he leaves office.
Mike Cernovich, another MAGA influencer, one of the most popular on X, tweeted today, Trump ran on idealism. Good people trusted him. They feel deeply betrayed. I hear it every day. Just another lonely voice to you? Or
Well, look, okay, I can also play I hear people saying every day that this is exactly what they voted for. They voted for a commander-in-chief to restore American strength on the world stage. They voted for a commander-in-chief to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. They voted for a commander-in-chief who would do what the 7 previous presidents would not do, and that's deal with these people with a firm hand. So I hear things too. And again, everybody's welcome to an opinion. I don't begrudge anybody their opinion, but you can't deny that Donald Trump has always been a hawk on Iran. He's always said he would never permit them to get a nuclear weapon, and he's taking those actions to prevent that right now. That is the direction he is doing, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone because he's always been very clear that he believes they're fanatics, and he believes they cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he believes that dealing with them and cajoling them, they don't understand that language. They only understand the language of strength.
I'll come back to some of that, but I want to let you into the conversation. So when you watch all that as a Democrat, you're celebrating. And I get your point. I get your point. I get your pushback. However, if you look at the polling, there's a slice of the MAGA base that doesn't like this. If you look at recent elections, the Republicans clearly have an enthusiasm and a turnout problem going back to 2025. And you can say special election, but there have been dozens plus now, and the Democrats 30. Have been winning. So you're not going to, you don't care to talk to them, but is there something Democrats should be saying to any Trump voter who might have just even paused or like, where are we?
Sure. But 2 things. Number one, I think more influential than Donald Trump, and this goes to your question, is what people see and feel in their own lives every day. So when you go to the gas pump, if you're a farmer, we've had stories on all day on CNN today about the strain that farmers are feeling and the fear that they have when they're trying to plant for next year. So I think people trust their own pocketbooks. For Democrats, I think there's 2 pieces to this. One, speak to the anxiety, but talk about what we would do. One of the ways Democrats made inroads in the 2006 midterms. I happen to be at the DNC. I'm sure Scott remembers those midterms quite well.
I do. I was at the we called them the salad days there at Bush White House.
But it was a time, one of the things we were able to do, George Bush had, as you know, dramatically dropped in terms of people's faith in his ability around the Iraq War. Democrats didn't just have our critique about the Iraq War. We had ideas about what we would do differently and a positive agenda that spoke to the economic concerns. That's what Democrats need to do now is, speak to the concerns, because there are people, let's talk about this. There are people who feel like the president doesn't need to be using vulgarity when you're talking about, bombing people out of existence, who feel like that's not actually what I voted for, and it's a war of choice that is actually harming people here at home. So speak to that and encourage the fact that that's what people are feeling, but then give them something else.
I suspect you're going to say, there you go again, to borrow an old term. We mentioned all those other voices in the Trump ecosystem, MAGA ecosystem. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former congresswoman, Candace Owens, the podcaster who's out there on many things, they say Trump should be removed.
You can have her, by the way.
They say Trump should be removed. The 25th Amendment, saying his threat to end Iran civilization, to wipe a civilization.
Hear from Scott Jennings because, yes, you can present Alex Jones as a fringe figure. He's a lunatic. But Tucker Carlson, not so long ago, was pretty much MAGA royalty. He was tight with Trump and J.D. Vance and Trump's sons and was at the convention and spoke there. So for Scott Jennings to act like Tucker Carlson is just this fringe figure that nobody listens to is not correct on Scott Jennings' part. Now Scott Jennings is going to simp for Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if he's the only person in the world doing that. However, I think what you're going to see 3 years from now when Donald Trump is gone, Scott Jennings and all the rest of the pundits when Donald Trump leaves the office in disgrace, and with an incredibly low approval rating, Scott Jennings is going to pretend like he never supported Donald Trump. He's going to be on to whoever the next Republican leader is. And all these pundits. I hope that CNN will, bring out the tapes to play clips for them. They're all going to pretend like they weren't sing for Donald Trump. And Scott Jennings is one of the biggest simps out there. In terms of Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and all the rest, they were also singing for Donald Trump just a few months ago and doing everything that they could to get him reelected. And Megyn Kelly talking about, can he not just act like a normal human? He's always been like this. He didn't suddenly change. So, where was Megyn Kelly with the criticism of Donald Trump again a year ago? Hey, can he not act like a normal human? Well, her bet was being on the side of MAGA. She sold her soul. Megyn Kelly did because she couldn't make it as a real journalist. So, she went all in with MAGA. Now MAGA is going down the tubes and Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and all the rest. They can see that this is a sinking ship and they need to get off. So they're also going to play well, they're already doing it now, but they're going to act like they never supported Donald Trump and they were ahead of the curve or whatever, but they all helped Donald Trump to get elected and they all knew what he was like. It wasn't like he suddenly became a lunatic. He's always been a lunatic. So what needs to happen is metaphorically the lifeboats need to be burned. All of these people, Megyn Kelly, Scott Jennings, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, they need to be banished from polite society and say, hey, you helped to get this scumbag elected. You don't get to change now. You knew what he was, but you're just changing your tune because he's suddenly so unpopular.
Off the planet.
You think there's a single average Republican voter out there, if you went out and knocked on their door tonight and said, yes or no, should we let podcasters and Democrats remove Donald Trump by the 25th Amendment?
Let me flip it.
You'd be thrown off of every porch in America.
Let me flip it just a little bit, because I agree with you that the overwhelming majority of Trump voters will listen to Trump. I don't think there's any question. However, Trump has benefited enormously from having an echo chamber, having allies that include all of those people. Right. Part of his success has been because of that. They've brought him into unconventional places in the electorate. They've brought out people who didn't vote before. They've helped him. You're shaking your head. You're one of them. You have a podcast now. It helps. It helps if people are echoing the president and saying he's right.
I don't deny.
If they have influence with his voters, it cannot help when they say he's wrong.
I don't deny the usefulness of having surrogates and allies, but I think you're oversubscribing their importance and undersubscribing the importance of Trump himself. And I think, frankly, the only reason we're playing them on our air right now is because they're useful to a narrative. We don't consider these people to be credible at any other time until they are attacking Donald Trump. Otherwise, we call them crazy. Otherwise, we call them crazy.
No, I'm being very careful about it, because I said I don't view Alex Jones as credible. I don't view Tucker Carlson as credible, or as a conservative, anyways. However, I do travel the country and talk to a lot of Trump voters who listen to these people. And I respect them and their choices. And they do listen to them. I'm not saying they side with them, but they do.
I'm not disagreeing they listen. I'm not disagreeing they listen. But again, I would just say, listening to someone and taking their word for everything over Donald Trump every day. I just
let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, Karen.
Yeah.
Then I might yield you the rest of the conversation. I'm not being fair at the moment. But you earlier used the term fanatics, talking about the Iranians, which is a term that people have used for a long time. Marjorie Taylor Greene's point actually is that the president said wipe out a civilization. When the Iranians say wipe out Israel, when the Iranians say wipe out the Jews, we say they are extremist fanatics. So why is it okay when the president of the United States says it?
I think the president was speaking to them in terms and stark language that he thought would get their attention. And let's just draw a line between that moment when we didn't think a deal could be had until later that day when all of a sudden they were at the table and interested in possibly dealing. So I'm not going to take away the space of the commander in chief to deal with these people in the way that he thinks is best. And now we have the possibility of a deal. I understand it's ragged around the edges and there's, things going on, but he's dealing with them in the way. And by the way, he's always had pretty good instincts on Iran. He had them since they took power. He had him in his first term. And I think a lot of Republicans recognize that.
So again, this is a hell of a lot of spin here from Scott Jennings. Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene just a short time ago were definitely people that were viewed as credible by MAGA and by mainstream Republicans. They wouldn't have had Tucker Carlson at the Republican convention if he were not a credible person within the Republican Party in MAGA. So, this is very much revisionist history on the part of Scott Jennings. But this guy is a propagandist. He spews misinformation and disinformation just about every day on CNN. But mark my words, this is my prediction. I'm making it right here on my show. In 3 years when Donald Trump is out and they're on to J.D. Vance or Lil Marco or whoever, Scott Jennings is going to be saying, Donald Trump, I never heard of him. I'm not familiar with that guy. You just watch. They're all going to drop Trump like a bad habit as soon as he's not politically valuable to them. Let me know what you think about all of this. Do you agree with what Scott Jennings is saying here on CNN? Is there a real fracture among MAGA, or is this much ado about nothing? Scott Jennings, all these people, Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, they're not credible. They're not really MAGA and should be thrown under the bus by these MAGA stooges like Scott Jennings. Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture and I'll see you in the next.